during those moments where we were getting the majority of the attention. And I remember one time somebody asked one of the coaches before the NCAA tournament, do you have a preference of who's going to win, who you want to win the NCAA tournament? And it's a long-time coach, too, and they said, I don't care as long as it's not Tennessee or Connecticut. You know, there was this point where people were, you know, dying for some other storyline to appear. And, you know, and there probably were some storylines, but nobody really wanted to pay attention. There weren't enough people that they could look into what all the other storylines were. And but now, you know, there's way more opportunities for storylines. There's more outlets for storylines, and I also think the women's game is benefiting and is going to continue to benefit from the fact that players are around long enough to create a name, create a buzz. You know, people weren't even mentioning Caitlin Clark when Paige was a freshman, because it was all Paige, and now it's all Caitlin. So had she left after her freshman year, like it would have been if she was a guy, or Paige left, they would have had to find somebody else. And if that person wasn't there, then you wouldn't have had the ability to do all this that's happened. So I think these players staying for 4 years, staying at the same school, hopefully, gives it a chance to grow, and it gives people a chance to fall in love with these kids. So I think that's been one of the biggest, you know, forces that I've seen from my vantage point. And you know, we would get 16,000 people for every one of our games because we had Diana. And everybody said, yeah, you know, she's the only player I like to watch because she plays like a guy. Like that was the validation that you needed to have in order for anyone to appreciate who you are, what your talents are, what you bring, you know, as an athlete, forget as a woman or as a man. And fans of women's basketball were fans of their teams. So when it got to the biggest stage, if your team wasn't involved, there wasn't like a national consciousness of, hey, we need to watch this. And I think it's gone beyond that. That now, because of what some of these kids have done, you know, they've created a fan base of women's basketball that they'll watch a great women's game, regardless of whether they have a rooting interest or not in the game. That they will go to the game, not just because it's their team playing, but you know, that's taken some time, but it's there now. And where it goes from here, I think is going to be really, really important.
You mentioned Paige's freshman year. It was all Paige. Had she stayed healthy, how do you think people would be talking about her today? Would she have the same profile, do you think, as Caitlin?
Same profile? They have two different types of games, you know. I think when your team wins and wins a lot, I think you draw a lot of attention to yourself. You know, when people say, who's the best player? Well, who's the best team? I mean, that's as it happens in the pros, right? Who's the best player in the country? Who's the most valuable player in America? Well, let's go look at the best team and pick their best player. That's usually a pretty good guess. And had we kept winning, you know, I don't know that Paige would be any bigger or less talked about, and I don't know that she would have the kind of impact that Caitlin's had, because they have different personalities, different games. They approach the game differently, and it works for both of them, you know. So I don't know, but it would have been nice to find out. There were a lot of great NBA players before Magic and Larry Bird, and so why didn't it happen? People didn't make it happen. So those two guys, because they did it in college and people saw them play a lot, they wanted to follow them after they left. So the WNBA hasn't had the benefit of these great players that have come along. They didn't have the following. They didn't have the hysteria that these kids have. So there wasn't a, I want to follow them. So hopefully this will change that narrative. But the WNBA is going to have to do a great job of marketing these guys. And the WNBA, I don't think, has done a great enough job of marketing their individual stars for whatever reason, because there's been a lot of them. And maybe now I think it'll change. But certainly they've laid the groundwork for it, 100%.
Geno, a lot of players might get caught up in a one-on-one showdown on national TV. What is it about Paige that will not allow her to get caught up in that?
Who says it won't? I mean, you know, kids are competitive. They want to win. They know what's going on out there. They know who's who. They know what's what. And Caitlin comes down and makes a huge three. Don't think that Paige is going to pass the next one up and pass it to somebody. So I think there will be a little bit of that, but it won't be, if I score more points than Caitlin, Connecticut's going to win. It won't be that at all. And it won't be, I have to match everything that she does. That's what I was saying. You know, Paige's personality is such that she'd rather score 10 points and us win than get 50 and us lose. So I think it's going to be about winning the game more than anything else. If you'd have talked to me in June this year, I would tell you, yeah, it was going to be us in South Carolina playing for the national championship. And then as things started to happen, I started to believe something different. You have to be realistic. And we live in a world at UConn where the expectations are unrealistic. But you have to be realistic. You know, you have to look at your team and you have to say, do we have an answer for everything that happens? And if the answer is no, then you just have to cross your fingers and hope that that thing doesn't happen, or those two things that you know you have no answer for. Okay, so there's a lot of things we don't have an answer for in tomorrow's game. Now, does that mean that we just wanted to hope we make the round of 64 and then see what happens? No, because our players will tell you this. They say, you know, playing at Connecticut is the greatest thing ever. But playing at Connecticut is hard as hell, because if two guys foul out tomorrow, we're supposed to be able to compete 5 against 3, because that's the illogical, delusional, you know, expectations that exist up there. So yeah, there was always, yeah, we can get there, but everything has to be done perfectly. And in my mind, I had a lot of plans for this weekend. This didn't include this. There are some people that are going to watch us for the very first time and say, what's the big deal about these people? And hopefully they see that we play basketball a certain way, and that we try to conduct ourselves a certain way, and that our game looks a certain way, and that, you know, we are who we are and we compete, and what you think of us or what your impression of us is, I have no control over that. But you know, one thing that I've noticed over the years that's happened, when people see us play for the very first time, 2 things happen. One, they fall in love with all my players because of the way they play and the way they conduct themselves. And they go, yeah, he really is a shithead. So those 2 things will still be true on Friday.